Unbelievable transformation. Passenger saves flight as pilot shocked by her inspiring control. The cabin erupted into chaos as Claire's heart raced, her instincts igniting within her. Just moments ago, she had been a nurse, bound for a medical conference. Now, she was a reluctant leader, confronted with the mind-bending reality of piloting an aircraft, while a panic-stricken crowd surrounded her. Her mind whirled with confusion, fueled by whispered doubts about her qualifications. She was just a small-town nurse, not a pilot. How could she possibly take charge? Yet the urgency in her mind pushed her forward as she recalled her father's words, stories of bravery, honor, and taking responsibility. As the plane lurched sharply, adrenaline coursed through her veins. A confrontation raged within her. Could she channel her father's spirit, or would self-doubt devour her? She inhaled deeply, focusing on the turmoil swirling around her. Anxiety squeezed her chest. "Focus," she whispered, partly for herself, partly for the frightened passengers. Their desperate faces were tethered to fleeting breaths and rising disbelief. Could she, a nurse, really be their answer in this moment? Claire's professional life had been dedicated to healing, to caring for others in the shadows of her hometown hospital, yet here she was, grappling with the weight of expectations far beyond her training. Panic crept in. What if she failed? What if trying to take control only led to disaster? As the jolt of fear hit, Claire bit her lip, physical pain to counter the emotional storm. She met the gaze of a man in the aisle, reading skepticism in his narrowed eyes. Panic? She fought the urge to falter. Uncomfortably aware of their scrutiny, she felt the burden of their doubt weigh heavily on her shoulders. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The aircraft was shaking like a leaf caught in a storm, and Claire's focus frayed further, a psychological battlefield. Could she trust her instincts, knowing that even her father had faced uncertainty? Every instinct screamed to retreat, to let the professionals handle it, but doing nothing meant a descent into oblivion. "No," she thought fiercely, "I can do this." The determination surged, battling with the inner voice urging her to play it safe. At last, she moved toward the cockpit, each step heavier with doubt. The control panel looked daunting, a world of buttons that screamed expertise. Her hands quivered as they hovered over the controls. What if she pushed the wrong button? The thought sent a wave of nausea over her, and yet with every inch closer to the cockpit, her father's lessons beckoned like a whisper from the past. She felt the stirring of hope, a chance to act against the swirling despair. But just then, a shudder rocked the aircraft, and an alarm shrieked above the chaos. The collective gasp of the passengers reverberated in her ears. Claire could hear whispers of resignation and fear. How could a nurse save them? The walls of self-doubt spiraled tighter around her. Would she be a hero or the bearer of tragedy? With the reality closing in, she tightened her grip on the controls. Could she transcend her identity as merely a caregiver and embody the hero everyone needed her to be? The question loomed large as the plane dove forward through the clouds. The cockpit loomed ahead, a world that felt both foreign and incredibly close. Claire's heartbeat thundered as she pushed open the door and stepped inside. She was enveloped by the whirring electronics and flashing lights, an alien environment that demanded expertise she didn't possess. Yet there was no time for hesitance. The chaos outside echoed in her mind as she steadied herself. She inhaled deeply, fighting the rising tide of panic that threatened to engulf her. The pilot's seat, How desperately she wanted to curl into the safety of it, yet it felt as far from her reach as the sky itself. It wasn't just a chair, it was a symbol of authority, of confidence, of capability. And what did she have? Just her scrubs and a lifetime's worth of caring skills, now repurposed in ways she'd never imagined. Synchronizing her breath with the turbulence made her feel alive, even in the midst of fear. "You can do this, Claire," she reminded herself, gathering a shaky resolve. Her fingers brushed the controls, and she marveled at the mammoth responsibility they represented. Suddenly, a glimmer of her nursing background flickered in her memory. While her official training hadn't equipped her for aviation, it had taught her how to assess situations rapidly, make decisions under pressure, and most importantly, how to care for others. Patient assessment, considering the vital signs of flight. "What's the status?" The disembodied voice over the intercom struck her like a bolt of lightning. It was a flight attendant, filled with sheer terror, asking for guidance. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily as she grappled with her next words. This was no longer about her fears, it was about ensuring safety in despair. Gathering her courage, she raised her voice, a revelation of empowerment. "I'm taking control of the situation. I need everyone focused." As she spoke, clarity emerged in the chaos. She was not piloting a plane, she was guiding a patient. She needed to stabilize her environment first, then assess her capacity to act. To her surprise, her nursing instincts kicked in naturally, a muscle memory she hadn't appreciated until now. "We need to breathe," she instructed, "in through the nose, out through the mouth." The passengers hesitated, but one by one they began to mirror her. While their breaths synchronizing gave her strength, she understood that this was simply the first step. "Stay calm," she continued, channeling authority she hadn't known she possessed. "I'll figure this out." Scanning the cockpit, Claire searched for resources that could help, manuals, instruments, anything. Her eyes landed on a checklist pinned to the panel. She grabbed it and flipped through the pages like a lifeline cast into a raging sea. "Trim, throttle, altitude," she murmured softly as she tried to absorb the terminology. It was foreign, not yet familiar, but oh, how she needed it to be. Each item she read marked a small victory against her trepidation, each word pushing her deeper into the role of decision-maker. The plane continued to tremble beneath her, reminding her of the stakes at hand. As she focused on the instruments, she found her mind gliding from doubt to determination. This transformation, however unlikely, demanded she evolve. Every ounce of her being echoed with the fight to survive. Then the air grew still, as if collectively holding its breath as a new sound filled the cockpit, the sound of a voice breaking through the static of despair. "Claire, can you hear me?" It was the co-pilot, breathy but strong. "Where are the controls for the autopilot?" As adrenaline surged through her chest, the moment crystallized into clarity. Could she seize this opportunity to bridge the gap between fear and action? The weight of the uncharted territory before her now felt less daunting. In this moment, she wasn't just a nurse nor a panicking passenger. She was on the precipice of transformation. "Engage autopilot," she responded, the words spilling with newfound authority that left no room for doubt. She turned toward the controls, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The time had come to face the impossible and carve her path amid the storm of uncertainty. But as she reached for the controls, the cabin rattled again, a fierce turbulence that made her stomach lurch. Would her newfound courage hold? The stakes rose higher, tension hanging in the air thickly as she prepared for the next move. Would she find clarity in chaos, or would everything spiral into disaster? As Claire's fingers hovered over the autopilot controls, every muscle tensed in uncertain anticipation. The plane jolted violently once more, but a strange steadiness crept into her veins, a counterbalance to the chaos. Time itself seemed to stretch. giving her precious moments to calculate her next step. "Focus," she chanted internally, a mantra born from years of medical training screaming for acknowledgement. She recalled every scenario that had ever been thrust upon her in the hospital. The frantic cries for help, the flicker of hope in a patient's eyes when she stepped in as a beacon of care. This moment was no different. Each passenger was a life she now bore the responsibility to guide. "Claire, are you there?" The co-pilot's voice cut through her contemplative haze, urgency tinged with surprise. It sparked a renewed flicker of conviction within her. "We need you." "Yes, I'm here," she asserted, her voice more assured than she felt. "Just hold on." Her eyes darted between the controls and the checklist, where autopilot engagement awaited her like a first responder's call. She could almost hear the silent plea of the cabin, an echo of people relying on her. She cast aside lingering doubts, recognizing the hidden resilience that had been dormant for too long. With a deep breath, she grasped the throttle. This was where she could assert her influence. "Co-pilot, I'm hitting the autopilot now," Claire declared, forcing unwavering confidence into every syllable. As her fingers pressed the button, a deep buzz resonated through the cockpit, followed by a slight easing of the tension that had gripped the plane. The violent jerking subsided into a steadier hum, and with it, the atmosphere within the cockpit transformed. "Engaged," she announced, the finality of her voice resonating through her body. Relief flooded the small space, but it barely registered as her mind raced ahead, already strategizing the next move. With the autopilot in control, she redirected her energy toward the co-pilot's instruction. "Blood pressure and heart rate?" he asked urgently, breaking down the situation into manageable terms, metrics she so easily recognized from her past. This was when her nursing training clicked back into focus. She could pulse the patient's vital signs through the controlled environment of an airplane. "Check the altitude and airspeed," Claire responded without hesitation, scanning the panel before her. Numbers flashed vividly, and for a brief moment they no longer seemed meaningless. Each detail bled into a much larger picture. "Should we prepare for descent?" "Absolutely. Think we gave ourselves a fighting chance?" he replied, visibly impressed. The co-pilot could sense her transformation. His cautious optimism fueled her fire. "Yes, I'll guide us through that." Claire reached for the radio, modulating her voice in a way that echoed both authority and composure. "All passengers, this is Claire speaking. We've engaged autopilot, and the turbulence is stabilizing. We will begin descent preparations shortly. Please remain in your seats." Taking intelligent command, her thoughts transformed chaos into clarity, a striking contrast that mirrored the turbulent skies outside. Each calculated action brought her the semblance of mastery she had feared she couldn't claim. She was no longer merely reacting, she was orchestrating. Yet still, a nagging wariness nestled in the back of her mind. This newfound confidence was exhilarating, but so perilous. What if something broke down? What if all she had fought for unraveled? She couldn't afford to waver now. And even as she focused on the intricate workings of the cockpit, a new layer of realization unfurled within her perception. She wasn't just confronting turbulence. She was navigating her own evolution. The lines between nurse and pilot blurred, dissolving into a singular identity, a leader faced with the ultimate test. Just as she locked onto a plan for descent, another rumble echoed through the cabin, intensifying the stakes. The voice on the intercom crackled desperately, a moment that would demand both her inner strength and her wisdom to navigate the storm ahead. "Claire, we have a situation." The co-pilot's tone shifted, and a chill coursed through her. Would she rise to meet yet another challenge? The answer hovered tantalizingly, just out of reach. Claire's heart raced at the co-pilot's words. She turned to him, looking for a hint of what was to come. "What's the situation?" Her voice betrayed none of the anxiety roiling within her. "There's a medical emergency in the cabin," he replied. urgency thickening the air between them. A passenger has lost consciousness. Every instinct surged within her, igniting a blend of fear and focus. She was trained for this, but the stakes were elevated tenfold. The confined space of the cockpit suddenly felt suffocating, walls pressing in as she balanced her flight duties against her training as a nurse. "Is it a cardiac event?" The words rolled off her tongue, as if they were a trigger to begin a well-rehearsed routine. She could mentally assess the patient from the limited information provided. The cerebral connections between her dual roles surged forth, intertwining her past with her present. The co-pilot nodded, urgency painted across his face. "Could be. We need to land, but the situation in the cabin isn't safe for a rough descent." Claire's pulse quickened, and she leaned back, letting her mind drift momentarily to the code blues she had faced in her nursing career, each one fraught with life-and-death choices. "What do I need to do?" she asked, determination breaking through her uncertainty. "Stay focused on flying. I'll talk you through this, but I need your input on how to handle it. You said to check blood pressure and heart rate. We need the same for our passenger. Can you guide me on what the flight attendants should do?" "Right," Claire replied, considering the most efficient path forward. She quickly directed her thoughts to the third dimension of her identity. It wasn't just about managing the mechanics of flying. It was also about harnessing her medical knowledge at a moment's notice. "Grab the medical kit," she instructed, calmness sharpening her resolve, "and advise the flight attendants to assess the passenger's responsiveness first. We need to confirm if there is a pulse, then call for a full assessment of vitals. If they're not breathing—" A suffocating silence punctuated her thought. "Got it," the co-pilot interjected, snapping his focus back to the task at hand. The sound of his fingers dancing over the controls wrested her mind from the brink of panic. Claire took a deep breath and channeled memories of her past. Her life as a nurse had been a series of tests. She had often stood as the only line of defense for a patient, yet those moments had propelled her growth. She had learned not just to operate under pressure, but to ensure that calmness reigned, even when chaos threatened to consume her. "Okay, visualize every step you've been trained for," she reminded herself. "Focus on the details." As she spoke, she began readjusting her grip on the throttle, visualizing the descent. "Altitude still steady at 2,000 feet, the co-pilot acknowledged, making adjustments as Claire delivered direct commands. The cabin's murmurs, heavy with tension, spilled through the cockpit door, but faded beneath the drone of her renewed momentum. She needed to maintain control over the situation. As she fixed her gaze on the horizon, the incoming storm reminded her of their predicament, not just in the air, but also the battle for a life that raged beyond the cockpit. "Claire, I'm counting on you." The co-pilot's voice brought her back, making her heart skip a beat. "What if I can't save them?" The thought crept in like a shadow, but she brushed it away. Fear had always been a poor advisor. This is my moment to act. Someone's life is in the balance. Just then, a sharp alarm blared, piercing her thoughts. A reminder that the turbulent skies outside were mirrored by conflicts within. "We may not have much time," Claire said. "Get someone in contact with Air Medical Services now. We need to resolve this quickly." The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, yet she embraced it as she made the final preparations for descent, aware that each choice could shape the outcome of lives aboard. As the plane trembled anew, Claire's resolve solidified. She was not just a passenger in the cockpit, she was a force that could steer toward hope. "Stay sharp, Claire," she whispered to herself, realizing that her journey had just begun. Suddenly, the co-pilot's perplexed expression shot a fresh wave of adrenaline through her. "We've got incoming turbulence. What should we do?" The question echoed in her mind, reflecting her own battle against the internal storm brewing within. Would she manage to navigate not only the turbulence outside, but also the uncertainty that lay ahead? What felt like an eternity compressed into mere seconds as Claire's thoughts raced with urgency. She mentally rehearsed the proper descent protocol, her dual roles colliding in a symphony of instinct and training. The cockpit trembled, yet amidst the turbulence, an unexpected calm began to anchor her focus. "Stabilize your altitude," she commanded partially to herself. The rising swell of panic radiated throughout the cockpit, threatening to overwhelm her again. But Claire channeled the same resolve that had guided her through countless medical emergencies. The turbulence around them matched the chaos of human life, unpredictable yet manageable with the right tactics. "Okay, we'll maintain level flight for now," she directed. "Gradually reduce speed and keep our approach steady. We need to prepare for any sudden shifts." It became apparent that she was a bridge between two professions she lived. The rhythmic actions of flying intertwined seamlessly with the deliberate steps of clinical care. The co-pilot nodded, fingers dancing across the controls with renewed purpose. As they supported each other, Claire envisioned herself as not just a co-pilot in a metal skyrocket, but also as a healer among her fellow travelers. The airplane felt like an operating room at that moment, each seat filled with patients under her watch. "How's the passenger?" she asked, her voice steady despite the rattling of the cabin. The co-pilot did a quick glance at his instruments before diverting his attention back to her. "I spoke with the flight attendants. They're monitoring vital signs now. It appears to be a severe fainting spell, but we can't rule out the worst-case scenarios." She felt the weight of those words settle around her, the chain of her past entwined with the immediate crisis. Claire's heart surged with an understanding that summoned courage from depths she had only recently discovered. "We can't just hope for the best," she murmured, uncertain if she spoke aloud or in her own mind. "Prepare to descend gently," she commanded. "We need to get above the situation and figure out how we can land without throwing everything into chaos." "On it," the co-pilot replied. As they began their descent, Claire's mind wandered to her nursing days, the hours spent learning about crises, procedures, and the crucial simplicity of human connection. Just as she had done in the hospital, she needed to ensure they communicated clearly and efficiently in this moment. The turbulence shook the plane again, sending a ripple of gasps through the cabin. Claire's eyes darted through the cockpit's instruments, her pulse steadying as she tightened her grip on the throttle. What did it mean to have lives resting in her hands? The weight was both intimidating and deeply liberating. "Let's push through this descent slowly. I want the flight attendants ready for arrival," she instructed, shifting towards a mentality of leadership. Each passing moment only solidified the resolve to act, reflecting a metamorphosis from a nurse to a bearer of hope. "Cabin crew to emergency landing positions," the co-pilot affirmed. The steadiness in his voice gave her strength, reinforcing the sense of mission they shared. Claire's gaze returned to the horizon. The ground loomed closer, angled towards her far thoughts. Fear still hovered like a cloud. They might not save the passenger, and she would have to grapple with that burden. But she pushed it away, refusing to let it distract her. In those moments, she realized the transformation wasn't only about handling this crisis, but also reshaping the narrative of her own life. What she had always been fearing, the impact of choices and responsibility, was now palpable, a testament to her journey from a nurse to a pilot. "Yes, I can navigate this," Claire whispered again, tightening her grip. Suddenly, the airplane jolted violently as they hit another pocket of turbulence. Alarms blared once more, this time about engine performance issues. Claire's breath hitched. "Regain control! What's our status?" The co-pilot's eyes widened, a mix of shock and determination dancing behind them. "We may have a larger issue than we thought. We need to troubleshoot now." The frantic pace of their journey had only just begun. Turbulence was their immediate enemy, but deeper, more profound challenges awaited them on the ground. "Claire, we need a decisive plan," he shouted, pulling her from her contemplative haze. She felt the reality of her dual existence crashing together, how to save lives while fighting against the chaos of the skies. It boiled down to clarity in crisis, and she needed to harness every ounce of her capability before it was too late. The storm raged outside, but Claire's resolve centered like her grip on the controls. The moment of truth loomed large, and she knew the fight was far from over. As they hurtled into the unknown, the choice was hers. How would she confront the reality of not just the flight, but her own journey? The cockpit pulsed with urgency, and Claire's heart raced not from fear, but from the raw energy surging through her. Every second mattered, and the severity of the situation demanded clarity and decisiveness. She momentarily closed her eyes, breathing deeply, drawing upon her training and experience as both a pilot and a nurse. The instinct to rationalize emotional chaos became her lifeline. "Okay, think," she muttered, forcing herself to hold on to the rationale that had guided her through countless crises in the past. She scanned the cockpit displays, her mind fracturing the incoming data. The engine warning blared, competing with the turbulence violently shaking the aircraft. Each sound was a challenge she had to face head-on. Her hands felt clammy on the controls, but she didn't let that deter her. "Let's conduct a systems check," Claire demanded, finding her voice. Her words snapped the co-pilot out of his startled state. He nodded, fingers flying over the controls, confirming her instincts. The weight of responsibility bore down on her anew as she thought about the passengers beyond the cockpit. They were counting on her to maintain control in a moment where everything seemed to spiral. She had transitioned from tender heartbeats in a hospital to living breaths in a metal tube, flying through the sky. The juxtaposition plagued her, yet it empowered her. "Flight attendants," she called over the intercom, realizing the power of her words. "Rustle up any available medical assistance. We may have more than one emergency on board." By sending that message, something inside her shifted. She recognized her own capability to hold the reins and take charge, to bring order from chaos. As the attendants rushed to respond, she could sense her evolving identity. She was no longer only defined by her past as a nurse. The turbulence intensified, slicing through her thoughts, but a sense of adrenaline replaced doubt with drive. As she managed altitude, she calculated the risks ahead. What would it mean if they had to make an emergency landing? Who might be injured? Who would need her help? Every decision would require a cool head and swift action, a challenge she felt ready to embrace. "Status report," she snapped, honing in on her co-pilot as he relayed emergency check procedures. The rhythmic exchange of information felt familiar. They were working as a seamless unit. "Engines are fluctuating. I think it's a fuel pressure issue," he said, a tinge of urgency punctuating his voice. "Okay," Claire replied, her voice steady. "We'll need to balance fuel systems. Can we maintain level flight until we troubleshoot?" "Affirmative," he stated, the confidence in his tone echoing the strength she needed. Claire pushed aside any lingering whispers of doubt. Hadn't she survived critical decisions in the ER before? This was no different, just with a wider backdrop. As they leveled out, she reminded herself that clarity emerged amid chaos. It was her responsibility to keep the passengers calm while managing the intricate puzzle of aviation risks. The slightest shift could alter the outcome. "Let's stabilize the situation while assessing options for landing," she instructed briskly. "I need your eyes on that fuel gauge. Communication is key, and we can't afford to make hasty decisions." The engagement between them became electric. Their mutual understanding deepened with every passing moment. Claire realized that she thrived in high-stakes scenarios, a trait she had underestimated in her previous life. It was more than pilot training. It was the unyielding spirit she had cultivated as a caregiver, the conviction that if a solution existed, she would find it. With renewed focus, Claire felt the cockpit's atmosphere shift from panic to a harnessed power. Decisions must come, and they required every bit of her composure. While turbulence rattled them from outside, the internal storm began to settle. "Prepare for crisis communication if we need to announce an emergency landing," Claire said, ensuring her authority didn't waver. The co-pilot looked at her, and for a moment she saw a flicker of understanding pass between them. It was not simply about control anymore. It was about the larger narrative they were weaving, a story of survival, teamwork, and decisive action in the face of chaos. Just as she felt the momentum shift in their favor, the aircraft jolted once more. Alarms blared yet again, this time more insistent. Other pilots in the region were signaling distress. It was clear they weren't alone in adversity. "Claire!" her co-pilot exclaimed, with a rising edge of concern. "We have a bigger situation developing. Can you handle the radio while I reboot the systems?" Her heart raced, adrenaline zipping through her veins like flames. "I got this!" she roared back, an unexpected surge of confidence roaring inside her. But how much control could she wield? How deep would her resolve be tested? The answers lay just ahead, cloaked in the storm still swirling outside as they approached decision time. What awaited them next threatened to unravel everything she had fought to build within herself. The cockpit emerged from chaos, but still held a raw intensity, the alarm's version of a wildfire burning deep inside Claire's determination. Every sound felt magnified as her co-pilot worked feverishly to regain systems control. Claire took a deep breath, grounding herself amidst the static of the radio calls from other flights in the area, their desperate tones layering upon each other. She stretched her fingers, tightening them around the microphone, feeling its weight as though it held the fates of everyone aboard. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Flight 472 declaring an emergency," she began, her voice steady but threaded with urgency. "We've lost fuel pressure and are requesting immediate assistance. We'll need all emergency services standing by." As she processed the reactions on the screen, a blinking response from air traffic control and the strains of voices over the static, she felt a warmth course through her veins. Her background in medicine, calming hearts, addressing panic, had molded her communication style, turning fear into composure. But this was different. Now she was controlling the fate of 50 lives while drawing strength from her previous role, intentionally intertwining two worlds she once thought separate. "Status report." Claire turned to her co-pilot sharply, her focus unyielding. "Fuel pressure is fluctuating, but it seems the backup system is stabilizing," he replied, scanning the screens with fervor as though he could visually coax strength from the machines. "Adjust the balance accordingly. I need at least 10 minutes of flight to assess landing options." Each word landed like a stone on the path ahead, shaping their direction. She could feel the latent anxiety from her co-pilot seeping through the cockpit like a rising tide, but that only stoked her resolve deeper. Without hesitation, Claire reached for the emergency checklist. Picturing her previous shifts in the ER, where seconds felt stretched, she allowed herself to plan methodically. "Implement flight-level changes to minimize drag. We're going to execute a controlled descent if necessary. We need to preserve as much fuel as we can." Just as she finished speaking, the aircraft jolted, sending her heart racing anew. A glance from her co-pilot told her he was just as disoriented as she felt in that moment. But something had shifted within her. "Stay with me," she said, commanding not just their tasks, but the air in the cockpit. "Let's synchronize our moves. This is how we do it." The turbulence matched their racing hearts, yet she sensed a flicker of appreciation from her co-pilot, an acknowledgement passing between them. They were becoming a unit in this storm, not just two pilots but partners, navigators of the surreal nightmare they were facing. With the radio crackling back, their desperate requests were answered as fire departments, paramedics, ready to assist, confirmed their positions near the expected emergency landing spots. Claire's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from clarity. They finally had some breathing room, though time was still of the essence. "Tell the flight attendants to prepare the cabin," Claire instructed, the authority in her voice reassuring her. "They need to keep passengers calm, brief them about emergency protocols. We may need to initiate an evacuation." He nodded, and she could see him rallying in the moment, channeling the fear into movement as orders were relayed throughout the aircraft. In the unfolding crisis of management and responsibility, Claire felt a pivot in herself. This was not merely a trial by fire, it was a revelation of the interconnectedness of her past and present. The nurturing aspect of her nursing had not been diluted by her determination to command the cockpit. It had firmly rooted her, bridging two seemingly disparate worlds into something powerful. With renewed resolve burning bright, she assessed the horizon as they descended toward their landing site. The clouds swirled aggressively below, threatening to swallow them whole, but she kept her grip firm on the aircraft's trajectory, eyes wide with focus. Suddenly, another alarm pierced the cockpit's tension. A warning flashed concerning an electrical system failure. The challenge had compounded, multiplying her fears like a fevered dream. "Adjust auxiliary power," Claire barked, heart pounding as she continued to juggle their multifaceted crisis. How much more could she adapt? Just how far could her resilience stretch before it snapped? The answers loomed like thunderheads ahead as they plunged deeper into the unfolding crisis. And as the aircraft reached its crucial threshold, a chilling thought crept into her mind. Was she ready to confront the limits of her own strength, both as a pilot and a person, before the storm inevitably broke? The alarms swelled, intertwining with the nagging pulse of fear that threatened to escape Claire's grasp. Every warning flickering on the dashboard mirrored the chaos in her mind. The aircraft was slipping further into uncertainty, and she questioned her own resolve more than ever. Would her instincts carry her through this, or had she pushed too far? "Claire!" Her co-pilot's voice cut through the noise, pulling her focus back. "We have to decide on our emergency landing approach." He was right. The aircraft systems were glitching, and their time was dwindling. They needed a plan. She took a deep breath, pulling from the well of knowledge and experience she had cultivated over years. Each beat of her heart synced with the urgency around them. "Listen," Claire began, her mind racing through the options before her. "We can divert to the nearest airport, a few minutes south of us. It's not ideal, but we have the backup systems to give us a chance to reach it if we act quickly." "Forwarding the new route," her co-pilot replied, his fingers easing over the controls, his confidence growing. They were pivoting together, and that unique bond, formed in the throes of crisis, rose to the surface. The radio chatter intensified again, peppered with instructions and concerns from air traffic control. Claire locked eyes with her co-pilot, a brief exchange that echoed their synchronized mission, a moment of clarity amidst the chaos. "Prepare for a controlled descent," she commanded, assertively flipping through their checklists like flipping pages of a well-known text. "Fuel pressure holds steady, but we will need to manage thrust carefully," he noted, glancing at the residual power readings. With the radio static still swirling, ghostly voices calling their flight numbers and reporting nearby conditions, she picked up the microphone again, her previous tremors now replaced with a crisp assertiveness. "Flight control. This is Flight 472. We are en route to quick descent. Fuel remains inconsistent, but backup is stabilizing. Fire and emergency crews need to prepare for possible evacuation." Tension reverberated back at her, a palpable weight teetering on the edge of disaster. But now she drew strength from the connection of communion with her co-pilot and the urgency binding the entire aircraft. The passengers, wrapped in fear but unknowingly sharing the burden, triggered her protective instincts. The nurse within her surging back into prominence, reminding her that lives hung on every decision. "Keep calm, folks," she broadcasted through the intercom. "We're facing a little turbulence, but our crew is expertly managing the situation." She hoped her words would resonate, that they might inject some comfort into the air. In truth, she was in a battle of wills, not just against the storm outside, but also with the roaring doubts within her. This wasn't merely a test of flying skill, it was a crucible of character. Every ounce of her conviction was on display. As they descended, the clouds loomed like dark phantoms encircling them. The earth below felt too distant, too uncertain. She wrestled with her fear, determined to reframe the narrative in her mind. What if, just what if, this was where she finally discovered her true mettle? The trials of her medical career had armed her with empathy and intuition, the ability to calm and lead under pressure. Perhaps now she could summon that strength all over again. Then, slipping into the moment, a thought flickered. The engine noise became a backdrop to her thoughts. There was an entire world out there, people watching, listening, waiting. "Claire, we've got a green light for approach," her co-pilot interjected, ripping her back into the present. "How shall we land?" Her grip on the controls tightened as determination surged through her veins. "Let's do this together. Engage all systems and follow my lead. We are going to bring this plane home." Yet even as she braced herself, another wave of alarms flooded the cockpit. The electrical failure warning blinked erratically. She felt the tension in her chest clawing at her resolve. Would this one critical error be the wire that severs her burgeoning confidence? Would she be able to fight off the rising tide of panic within? Suddenly, the embrace of doubt loomed larger, threatening to pull her under. What if this was too much? What if she couldn't rise to the occasion yet again? And then it hit her. This was not just about flying the plane. It was about digging deep and unearthing the resolve she never knew she had. It was an opportunity to transform. The alarms cascaded, and as they began their final approach, she could almost sense the pivotal moment arriving. But as she braced herself for the inevitable landing, a sudden realization imprisoned her mind. What if poise and control, this newfound strength she was discovering, were pushed to their absolute limits? What awaited on the other side of this storm? The aircraft shuddered violently, the shaking intensified by the urgency of their situation. Claire's thoughts raced as the alarms echoed, her mind functioning in overdrive. She couldn't afford to dwell on the flickering warning lights or the uncertain fate hovering over them. Instead, she honed her focus. The descent was turbulent, but it was a route they could navigate, if only she shifted her perspective. "Claire!" Her co-pilot's voice cut through her spiraling worries. "What are we doing about the electrical system?" Her breath hitched, the reminder of a crucial fault pulling her back to the present. "We will initiate a manual override. We may have to rely on standard controls without the electrical assist. I'll take the left throttle. You keep an eye on flaps and the altitude." Now they were proactively reshaping their circumstances. This collaboration, this dance of urgency and skill, ignited something within her. A sense of purpose, sharper than fear, coursed through her veins. "Understood," he replied, his tone steadier. There it was again, that bond fortified in adversity, two pilots working as one. As the throttle responded to her commands, Claire felt the familiar rush of power. It was as if, in that moment, she had reclaimed her role as the pilot instead of merely a passenger on a chaotic ride. She began to recalibrate her thinking, drawing from the wealth of her experiences in medicine. Each challenge she faced as a nurse, every life she had fought to save, began to resurface in her memory. She understood better than anyone the value of patient perseverance, the importance of compassion, and the comfort of steady hands in tumultuous circumstances. "Control your reactions," she whispered to herself, grounding herself again in her training. "Fuel pressure is critically low," her co-pilot's voice broke her reverie. "If we keep pushing the engines, we might stall." She nodded resolutely, the stakes sinking in. There was no margin for error. They were on a perilous edge, and every decision mattered. We need to make this approach count and quickly. I'll trim the engines, but prepare for a potential stall warning. Claire's fingers danced over the controls, running calculations in her mind, her focus unyielding. Each movement was deliberate, each decision a reflection of the experience she had accumulated over the years. Relentlessly pursuing that sliver of clarity, she conjured an image of the passengers behind her, their trust placing a weight on her resolve. The clouds thickened ahead, swirling ominously, but Claire was not deterred. This storm was as much a part of her journey as anything else she'd encountered. "We're almost there. Look ahead. The runway is in sight. Prepare for landing." Her intensity was palpable. As they leveled out, she felt the roar of the engines wane into an eerie calm. The descent flushed her with adrenaline, and a realization dawned. This was not merely a professional challenge. It was an unveiling of her truest self. All the moments of doubt, the hesitation in her voice silenced as clarity emerged from chaos. But just as she steadied the course, static buzzed through the radio. Chaos surrounded her, tearing at her fragile focus. "Emergency crews are standing by." The voice crackled, urgency morphing into something frantic. "Prepare for landing." Her heart raced again, an unexpected twist revealing itself. Claire glanced at the dashboard, alarm bells ringing louder than before. The lithium gauge was dropping, and the plane shuddered violently, as if sensing its impending fate. The intimate connection she'd found within herself began to falter under pressure. Was this newfound strength, this empowered state of mind, on the verge of unraveling? "Are we going to make it?" her co-pilot asked, palpable fear creeping into his voice. Claire wrestled with her thoughts, teetering between resolve and despair. Was she capable of delivering a calm assurance? Could she regain her authority in the face of impending danger? "We have to try," she breathed, her voice steadier than her heart. In those tense moments, she glimpsed the transformation burning brightly beneath her fear, a power igniting in her core that demanded to be unleashed. The only path forward was to confront the turmoil head-on, not just outside, but within. It was time for her to break through. Enduring uncertainty loomed, pressing against her thoughts. As they descended towards what felt like their last chance, she realized with urgency that the ultimate confrontation was not with the mechanics of the aircraft or the fickleness of fate. It was with herself. And with that, Claire prepared to face the freedom of unknown possibilities beyond the storm. But as the ground drew closer and alarms echoed like haunting legacies of doubt, a question pulsed with intensity. When the dust settled, would she emerge a hero, or was this moment destined to rewrite her future in shadows? The turbulence began to intensify as Claire's heart raced with urgency, but an unexpected calm settled within her core. The airplane's engines roared against the chaotic winds, yet in that moment she felt undeniably empowered. It was as if she had tethered her past to the present, and every instinct, every lesson ingrained during her years as a nurse surged forth, defying the odds. "Prepare for landing," Claire commanded, her voice unwavering, emanating authority that now felt innate. She squeezed her hands around the controls, pushing through the tempest of doubt, focusing entirely on the rhythm of her breaths. Each inhale cradled clarity, each exhale released the fear once clutching at her throat. Her transition was more than physical. It was an awakening, and she felt the weight of her past responsibilities transforming into tangible strength. "Throttle down! Hold steady!" Claire called to her co-pilot, who was fully aligned now, eyes pooling with resolve. Together, they initiated an emergency descent. The alarms blared around them, but Claire rebuffed the noise with a singular focus. They were not just passengers seeking to survive a flight, they were co-captains on a mission to conquer adversity. Claire's mind locked into a concentrated state, her nursing instincts coupled with the thrill of piloting the aircraft. The chaos spun around her like fraying threads, and she collected them into a cohesive plan. A small, decisive act. Flaps at 30 degrees, preparing for landing. Contact the emergency services, let them know we're coming in hot. The radio crackled back with assurances as she maneuvered the plane towards the indicated runway, a beacon of safety ahead, waiting beneath the dark clouds. Cries of determination and grounding echoed in her heart. The passengers in their seats gripped their armrests, some praying while others held on to hope. It was Claire's time, her moment to prove that she was more than a nurse. She was a leader, a lifesaver, a sculptor of fate. As the landing gear engaged, a deep breath slipped through her lips. The disparity between fear and control paled in comparison to the confidence surging within her. Could she really pull this off? She had once doubted her own capabilities, feeling smaller than the challenges before her, but now she was ready to rise above. With the ground rushing to meet them, Claire felt her heart sink with the plane, a singular entity converging as one. "This is our defining moment," she murmured, channeling her thoughts to the passengers, to herself, to the cosmos, as she propelled the aircraft towards safety. "Landing gear down," she essentially whispered, aware that moments lingered on the precipice of triumph or disaster. The touchdown was smooth, but reverberated loudly in her veins. Claire gripped the controls tightly, guiding the plane deftly down the runway as welcome screams of relief and praise erupted from her co-pilot. She could sense the other leaders, the flight attendants, witnessing the timeliness of her actions as they prepared for the evacuation. The plane anchored to the ground, and in that singular moment of silence, Claire felt as though she had conquered every doubt that had plagued her since the moment the crisis began. The plane had landed intact, and she had accomplished what once felt unattainable, transforming herself from a mere passenger into a beacon of resolve. As emergency services rushed towards them, Claire exhaled, letting the release wash over her, akin to a tidal wave pulling back from the shore of uncertainty, revealing the treasure of her resilience. "Claire!" her co-pilot exclaimed, disbelief coursing through his words. "That was incredible. You did it." It was then that every conflict she had battled, the self-doubt, the fear of inadequacy, receded to the background noise of the past. She had transcended her own limitations, merging compassion with command, proving to herself and everyone around her that she was equipped not only to treat lives, but also to protect and preserve them. Stepping back from the controls, Claire felt a sense of clarity cement into her identity. No longer just a small-town nurse, she had engaged with destiny and emerged stronger. She had navigated through the storm and transformed her life through decisive action, evolving into a force capable of steering through chaos. With unwavering confidence, she addressed the passengers, her voice echoing with newfound authority. "Everyone, thank you for your bravery. Help is here. We're safe now." Their faces, once etched with fear, now reflected gratitude and awe. As she watched the passengers evacuate, Claire's heart swelled. She realized she was not just a survivor, she was a deserving achiever, transformed through the challenges she had faced. She had proven to herself that she could rise beyond expectation and shape her path toward fulfillment. This realization solidified her aim and aspirations moving forward. The air filled with a rekindled sense of purpose, each breath reminding her that she had conquered the skies, and finally, herself. With that thought igniting an unquenchable fire, Claire knew this was just the beginning of her newfound journey, soaring into a future filled with possibilities. If you felt inspired by Claire's journey of transformation and personal achievement, you need to subscribe now to the channel for more exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and bring hope to those who need it most. Please comment your reactions and theories about the ending, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Your support is vital for them to witness the power of personal overcoming stories.